Blessings, beautiful people. How are you doing? Hope you're doing well. I'm making this video as part of a series of freeform locking, sharing all my experiences, all my tips, and some inspiration on the freeform locking journey. I've also got an ebook out, which I'm really excited. It has an audio meditation included with loads of tips about semi-freeforming, freeforming, and holistic inspiration from my journey as a yoga teacher as well. So feel free to check out the links above and below, and let's get straight into this video because it's a little bit of a sensitive one, and I know that many people have asked me questions related to this. So I've got my herbal tea ready, and we're just going to have a nice heart-to-heart kind of conversation about the teenage stage of locking, because it can be very challenging, especially when we are right in the middle and our hair is doing its own thing. It's not completely locked, and especially if you're deciding to freeform, it can be extra kind of challenging because you're not maintaining the roots in any way whatsoever. So I want to share some tips that have helped me, especially in the first set of locks that I had when I didn't have that much information out there, and there wasn't really a lot of people to follow when it came to freeforming. And these tips really inspired me the second time around when I went through the second set of locks and the teenage stage with these set. So I always like to look at the positive things when it comes to challenging situations. And for me, the locking experience has been quite a self-evolution, a self-growth process, if you'd like to call it, in so many different ways, because it just helped me learn so much more about myself and all the things that I probably was attached to. And one of the things that I was really attached to was the way that I looked. And when I started freeforming and locking my hair right at the very beginning, it just changed a lot of things. You know, I had to rearrange some of the stuff that I was thinking about myself, or some of the things that I was attached to related to how I thought was, or what I thought was beautiful, or what I liked about myself, because the teenage stage, let's be honest, is not always pretty. It's not always something that we feel is pretty. Maybe it does look beautiful, and I think many people who go through this teenage stage actually look amazing, but we don't always feel that way because our locks are just doing our own thing. And especially if we're used to having our hair a certain way, it can be very challenging. We can find that we are no longer in control over how our hair looks, and especially as women, hair is a big thing, I think, in terms of how we look and how we project ourselves from our crown chakra. You know, we're just radiating from that place. Obviously, it's not everything. It's not the whole reason why we look or feel a certain way, but it does make a big difference. So let's talk about the teenage stage and why so many people find this challenging. Just like the name, it sounds really uncontrollable. Sometimes it does its own thing. It's a bit temperamental. It can be very challenging, especially if we want our locks to look a certain way. One day it might look like one thing, it might look like another thing on the next day, and also the amount of frizz might be quite a lot depending on your texture. So many people find this challenging, and I certainly did on both occasions, on the first set of locks and the second set of locks. So these are what or some of the tips that I found really helpful. And the first thing was to just return to radical self-love. Doing the things, reminding myself to take the time to do everything that makes me feel connected to self-love. And really to step up the routine when it comes to self-care. This took a lot of the focus away from my physical appearance and actually in focusing on what made me feel good. So, for example, instead of focusing on my hair and my locks and how they were changing, I would go off and do things and activities that made me physically feel stronger. So during that time especially, I was going through yoga teacher training the second time around. So I found that my body was becoming so much stronger. I had something to focus on. You can probably look for activities or classes or different things that you can do at home, like home routines, that makes you feel connected within and makes you feel like you're really taking care of yourself. So you're taking the focus away from your hair and directing that beautiful energy into something that still nurtures you and makes you feel good. The second thing I would say is that this is a wonderful opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself in some way or another. So as well as doing the self-care routines, maybe it's a wonderful transitional time to also think about things in your life that are changing. I always see that when we're going through changes in our life, we will always go through some sort of teenage stage, and it doesn't have to be related to our locks. It can be related to the journey of getting some sort of goal done. And I know for myself, when I was going through the teenage stage in both situations with the first and second set of locks, I was going through a lot of changes internally as well. And it gave me a lot of time to start to focus and to plan ahead in the goals that I wanted to do. So connecting to the goals that I wanted to do, I would start journaling. And journaling was a wonderful way to keep track of what was going on the outside with my locks, all the changes that were going on in my life, and also the internal changes within, and all the challenges that came up. And something really magical happens, I think, when you start writing down all your fears and all your challenges in pen and paper and actually seeing it for what it is. It starts to be less scary, and you start to maybe really look at it in a completely different way when you write down a list of all the things that you find challenging. And one by one, I went through the list and I started looking for proactive things that I could do in order to combat those fears, those doubts, and also the misbeliefs that I was having about myself during that teenage stage of the journey, both with my locks and also with my lifestyle as well. The next thing I would definitely say is that sometimes the people in our lives, well, sometimes they don't really help the process at all because they're curious about what you're doing with your locks. Sometimes they come, and even random strangers might come up to you and ask you what you're doing with your hair, especially when your teenage stage is very frizzy and looks like you're not maintaining your locks and you're free-forming at the same time. So it can be quite challenging. So what I found that this was a good opportunity to remind myself of my choices in life. So this was a choice that I created, and this was a good opportunity to really be assertive with choices, not just with my locks, but in my life in general. So as I was changing, as I was evolving, as I was going through the teenage stage, not just with my hair, but with my life in general, I learned that this was a good opportunity to be more firm about the choices that I was making, and realizing that not everybody was going to like it, especially the people closest to us sometimes might be the biggest barrier, because they're the ones who have to also shift their mental perspective about who you are when you're changing. But that's okay, that's okay. Not everyone is going to understand, and it's just a beautiful experience to reaffirm what it is you want on your journey with your locks, with your choices and how you take care of your locks, if you're free-forming or not, and with your life. If you're making changes in your life at the same time, it's a good opportunity to just affirm to yourself that this is what you want to do, and you will get all these different challenges from the universe to see if that's really what you want to do. This is one of the things that I keep getting time and time again on my journey, and also working with clients as well. I notice that the minute we decide to make a change in our life is sometimes the time when we get most of the challenges coming all at once. It's almost like the universe is testing us to see, do you really want to go down this route, or do you want to return back to the old ways of things that you were doing, the things that you were doing in the past in your journey? So take this as an experience, take this as a beautiful experience in learning about yourself and how you can assert yourself in your goals and in your life. The last quick tip is to just have some fun, to just lighten everything up, have some fun, and try experimenting with your style. As you're changing, as your locks are changing, and maybe you're changing internally, maybe it's a wonderful time to just try out different styles. If you're very cautious about your teenage stage and you're free-forming, maybe it's a good time to learn about head wrapping and trying out different colors and different styles with that. You could also try things related to makeup. You can try maybe new earrings. There's just endless amount of ways that you can experiment and channel that energy in a positive way. Also, you can start looking at maybe different options when it comes to holistic beauty and holistic self-care. So this was something that I experienced with both sets of locks. I just decided that it was an opportunity to deepen my knowledge about holistic beauty. So looking at more brands out there to do with natural makeup, to do with different clothing as well, you know, maybe choosing different clothing that I would before, so more natural materials and that sort of thing. Just expanding my knowledge of the holistic lifestyle in general. I found that it really helped me with just feeling more in tune with myself, with learning new things, with feeling inspired, and also trying to change my style up a little bit as I was going through some changes. So I hope this has inspired you in some way. I have more videos in the freeform locking experience, and feel free to subscribe where I will share many more tips, many more inspirations that come in my journey right now and also throughout my journey as well. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Satnam.